listening to The Terrific Teacherpreneur, a podcast for teachers looking to grow a successful online business. Your host, Alex, was able to transform her Teachers Pay Teachers store from a small side hustle into a profitable full-time business. She now helps other teachers do the same. Listen along for actionable tips and helpful wisdom about business and marketing as a teacherpreneur. Here's your host, Alex.
Hello and welcome to the Terrific Teacherpreneur podcast. I want to talk about how to, the next steps basically for how to scale and grow your business. This was a question I got when I asked for some podcast ideas, and I actually got a few other questions that kind of similar that I'm going to sprinkle throughout this episode and sort of answer as I go. But it's a question we all have, isn't it? You know, whether you're earning $50 a month, $500 a month, $5,000 a month, or $50,000 a month. On some level, we're all wondering, how do I get to the next level? Just never goes away and it never changes. And it starts off with growth. You're in that growth phase. Oh, I'd love to earn a few more $100. I'll make some more resources. You know, you're all about growing. And then eventually start getting to more of a scaling and kind of doing more advanced things. You become more veteran. You start doing things like hiring and stuff. There's lots of different behaviors, lots of different things we're going to be talking about today. And I'm actually going to be breaking down a few different earning brackets. So if you're earning less than $100 a month, this is my thoughts. If you're earning, this many thousand, this is what I think you should do. And this is just a few little ideas for each kind of range that you're in, a few little things to think about, a few little things that you might want to work on. But I really hope it helps. So let's get started. So if you are someone who is fairly new to TPT or just kind of on a small store and you're earning less than $100 a month, for the most part, the first thing I would just make sure you do is to check, have you got enough resources? Say you've only got 10 or 20 resources. I always recommend just keep creating in your really, really early days. Product creation is where it's at. If you have around 50 resources though, but you're still literally only making $10 or $20 a month, that's a little bit of a red flag. Once you start getting a substantial amount of resources in your store, you should be able to crack into the 3 figures. And it usually means you need to start doing some optimizing, and that's actually making your listings decent enough to convert buyers. And so, you really probably at this point need to be doing some learning, and that would be learning about SEO, learning about covers and thumbnails and previews and descriptions and how to make your listings better. So you if you've got a decent amount of products, you might want to press pause for a second and go back and update the ones you already have. Because when we are new, we first start our stores, more often than not, we just don't really know what we're doing, quite simply. And so there's a lot of learning here. Listen to podcasts, read blog posts, watch YouTube videos. You don't have to invest in anything at this point. Like I said, if you're earning quite a small amount of money, you might not physically be able to afford a course or a membership, and that's fine. Don't feel pressured. There is a lot of free information out there. So absorb all that information, do the learning. And one final thing I want to say, do not do any marketing. If you are not able to crack into the 3 figures, so you can't make $100 a month, the worst thing you could be doing is getting distracted by making Instagram reels or whatever. So please, no marketing. To get to that first $100 a month, you really need to be creating great resources and optimizing them, making sure as well with any future product creation that you're not making things that are just really overdone. Sometimes we do kind of to make things that we think will be fun. And then when you actually need to look at the market and say, oh, hey, I'm in a quite competitive niche here, and making another set of task cards on that topic is just going to have me buried on page 20 because it's been done a million times. I know that's a bit disheartening, but there are things that haven't been done a million times. There are gaps in the market and you just have to find them. So something to think about. Okay, if you are earning a few $100s a month, so you're in that kind of 3-figure phase, maybe you're looking for, you're earning $200-300, you'd love to earn near 1,000, or actually you're in the high hundreds and you would love to crack that first $1,000, 4-figure months sound like the dream to you. And I'm sure that's many of you listening, because it is honestly the majority of sellers at this point are usually earning a few hundred. This was one of the questions I actually had someone ask, and I wanted to read it out because I think it's really helpful. They said, I keep hearing a version of the phrase, what got you to this point won't get you to the next level. I really like that. That's a good quote. Then they said, I've been stuck in the $500 to $1,000 range for quite a while. What steps or mindset do I need to do/take that will get me to that next level? And so I really do like that phrase. I think I often say things I don't know, I've probably said it on the podcast, that saying, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expect different results. Sometimes we do. We find ourselves just kind of stuck in a rut, and then we're like, I don't understand why I'm not increasing my sales. It's because you haven't done anything different. Maybe your thing has always just been creating products. You just keep churning them out. And there just becomes a point where that just doesn't work anymore. I will highly recommend you listen to, if you haven't done so already, my Law of Diminishing Returns episode. Really, really confronting, but important to listen to understand that there just gets to that point where you just keep doing something and it's just no longer serving you. So something to keep in mind. So with the other example, I would do a little product creation check. If you are a smaller store, going with the creating is important. Product creation is important. Maybe you're working towards your first 50 or 100 resources, and that's fine. Keep going. That will help you get to that $1,000. I know that I had a big jump in sales as my store grew. That's the reality. Not that we should just be creating products for the sake of it, but just that it's not crazy that I made more money with 100 resources than I did with 10. That's just like logic, So, you keep creating, that's fine. But if you have around, 50 to 100 resources, or maybe even more resources, and you're not able to crack into that $1,000, like say you have like 80 resources or 120 resources, something like that, you're like, I've got a lot of resources here. Why am I still not able to make 4 figures? Something is going on, because you probably should be able to make that, and I say that from experience, but like literally other sellers have done it. So it is possible. We all know it's possible. I was earning a couple $100 a month when I had quite a small store, like 30, 40 resources. By the time I'd got, a big catalog of like 100 resources or hundreds, I was at that point where I was earning 4 figures. So it is possible. That's just obviously anecdotal. That's just me, but it just shows you that it's literally possible. So if you're not making 4 figures and you have quite a big store, something's going on with those resources, and you probably need to be doing more optimizing and a little bit less creating. You don't have to completely stop creating, but churning out your 101st product is not going to be a game changer at this point. Something's going on, so you need to be looking at data. And I presume that at this point you would have a decent amount of data for all your resources. Figure out why you're not getting views. Work on SEO, obviously do all your cover, thumbnail, preview updates and stuff. I probably wouldn't recommend marketing. I think this is obviously just an opinion, so you don't have to agree with me. But I personally think when you're in the couple of $100 a month sort of phase, your goal should be your store. Like quite simply, how can I earn thousands of dollars? I probably need to create products and optimize those products. Like that's where the money is. When you get to having thousands of dollars a month coming in, yeah, marketing's great, but I just don't think it's a really good thing to do when your earnings are a lot lower. It can be so distracting. You end up spending hours and hours on Facebook and Instagram and stuff.
Oh no, not another marketing podcast, for God's sake. You know what else your marketing team doesn't need? Another playbook to follow, another monthly pipeline alignment meeting, yet another dashboard to show attribution, which makes no sense. That's why I created Banter with Billy, a no BS podcast where marketing pros and myself get together to start sharing the stuff that does work and doesn't work, and well, banter. Give it a listen.
So I would probably, this is a bit strict, I know, but probably I would ditch all marketing at this point, or I would just drastically scale it back. If you have an Instagram account that's really thriving, for example, you don't want to just completely ghost it. That's not great for your growth. But let's be real. If you're someone that's got all these marketing platforms and they're not doing anything for you, you've only got 100 Instagram followers, you haven't really gotten around to getting your Pinterest to take off yet, you've only done like one blog post. Like if you're in those early stages of marketing, stopping marketing is not going to hurt you at this point. It's actually going to help you. But yeah, I will add that little caveat in that if you've got a marketing platform that is thriving, of course, you're probably going to want to maintain that. But just, keep in mind how much time you're spending on it. In terms of mindset, because that was part of the question this person asked, this is where you really, really should be treating your business like a business. That is a big thing that will get you into that next range. Most of you probably already are investing in clip art and fonts and things, maybe investing in courses or programs or whatever. That's really important at this stage. But many people still treat it a bit like a side hustle or a hobby, and they don't want to put any money or time into it, and then they can't understand why it's not this thriving, profitable, huge business. But obviously the reality is if a business needs investment, and time and money is the way to go. Now, if you are earning thousands of dollars a month, yay, how exciting, you can do marketing. I'm giving you permission here. I think once you've gotten to that point, you do tend to have a bit more of a bandwidth where you've got some really successful resources, bringing in money. And so, doing a bit of marketing helps you stand out from everyone else. But it should still be fairly limited. We don't want to be spending the majority of your work sessions creating Instagram posts instead of making previews, because in the long run, you're spending time on something that isn't probably going to bring you a lot of money. So keep that in mind, I think. You probably should be limited in how much marketing you do. Maybe you do 1 or 2 platforms at most. I don't really know that anyone should be doing the whole every single platform thing. Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, blog, website, podcast, YouTube, email list, like where where you feel like you have like 10,000 platforms. That's really not something you should be doing until you are a really established seller where you can hire people to help you. Until you can really afford to hire people, like a decent amount of people to help you with all these platforms, you probably shouldn't be doing them all. So 1 or 2 is always a great amount. And it shouldn't be more than 20 or 30% of your time at most. Maybe you spend 1 day a week doing a little bit of marketing, but you just don't want to be sucked into all of that. So you could do a bit of product creation if it sparks joy for you, but just don't overdo it. Don't feel like you need to churn out a new resource every week because that's going to suddenly help you hit 5 figures. It probably won't. The law of diminishing returns really, really hits you when you have 100 products, because when you're going from that sort of 0 to 100, it's just growth. It usually really has a big impact. Once you start getting into the hundreds, whether you've got 200 or 300 resources, the growth is not quite as extreme. And so you just keep churning out resources, and it just gets to the point where it's just not having that same effect anymore. And so, instead, you really do need to be spending a lot of time optimizing, especially if you're earning thousands of dollars a month. You presumably have all these really successful products. If you bestsellers are doing really well, you should be making sure that you're giving them a lot of TLC. And at this point, you should obviously have a lot of data. Are you using it? Are you really diving into it? Are you fixing SEO on your resources with low views? And I'm sure you have some still. Are you putting the time into making all of your covers really, really gorgeous? Getting into those optimizations is going to be really impactful. I mean, the reality is if you are earning $2,000 a month kind of amount of money and you're like, oh, I would love to get to the high thousands. I want to earn $8,000. That would be so cool. Or I would love to earn 5 figures a month. That's not going to happen if you have a store riddled with outdated covers and missing previews and thumbnails, terrible SEO. That's pretty much impossible. And, you've gotten this far with a few lucky resources maybe that people really want and need, and somehow by some miracle you're doing okay. But the reality is getting really large amounts of money usually requires really great listings. You just got to have these really irresistible, high converting listings. And yeah, that's just unavoidable. So someone actually asked a really interesting question. They said, I would love to know what is the maximum potential of a TPT store. For example, if you have 100 products and you weren't to do any kind of marketing and you just optimized all of it, what is the maximum potential of that? And at what point do you know that you've reached that maximum potential? Would you need to move on to another form of marketing like Pinterest or email marketing? It's a really in-depth question, and I'm going to try and answer it the best I can. But I've heard, and I'm sure some of you may have heard, it's I don't actually know who this person is, but there is a story I heard where it was this person that had 30 products or maybe less than 50 products or something in their store. It's like an old wives' tale in the TPT community. I'm sure there is someone out there that actually, knows who this person is, but I've heard this many times. And I think they were earning 6 figures a month, which is crazy and obviously not the norm. But I always like to think of that person, and I think that shows that it's possible. Not that we should all be working towards that or hoping for that, because obviously that's just crazy, but it shows that there's someone out there that has a pretty small store and is making massive money. They're clearly doing something right. The reality is there's not this magic number of products you need to have. Oh, you have to have 100 if you want to make 6 figures a month. No, there's no magic number. It could be different for everyone. We're all in different niches. We've all got different products. Somebody could be earning $12,000 a month with 70 products, and the other person might have 700 products. We all have different amounts of products. There's no magic number here. But in this question, the person said, if you had 100 products without any marketing, what's the maximum potential for that? The sky is literally the limit. Like I said, you could literally earn thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. And this would only be, of course, if these were amazing resources, amazing optimization. Like maybe you are not in like a saturated niche and you're ranking really well, and there'd obviously have to be a lot of magic going on there. But it's technically possible. And the reason I want to say these crazy stories and talk about these high numbers is because we shouldn't be limiting our beliefs here and thinking, oh, there's probably a limit. You probably can't earn more than $5,000 or $10,000. Like, you can earn crazy money. Just because it isn't happening for you or most people doesn't mean it's not possible. And I think that's something we should keep in the back of our mind. And so they said, at what point would you know you've reached this and that you'd have to start marketing? There is no have to start marketing. And I mean that when I say like there is never, ever truly a scenario where you have to start marketing. You could literally, there are people out there, many, many sellers have heard, and Facebook groups say, I don't do any marketing. There are many, many sellers who simply create and optimize their store and have just a fantastic store. And that's where all their money comes from. And they don't do any marketing. Again, another story of people finding success doing that. So you don't have to. There will never be a point where you have to. There only comes a point where maybe you might want to. And that's a very different thing, where you might want to go to the next bracket and you really feel like you've done everything you can in your store and you've got the capacity to hire people. I'm going to talk about this kind of stuff next in the next example. But yeah, you don't have to market. You really, really don't. And there is no limit in your potential with how much you can earn. The only thing limiting you is you, really, and where you spend your time, if you're spending your time wisely. And you could have two sellers who have very, very similar stores. They both have 100 resources. One person could be earning like $100 a month. Another person could be earning $10,000 a month. It's really not about how many products you have. And they could both be doing no marketing. It's really not about having an email list in that kind of sense. But it is about having amazing products and listings. Like those are the two things you need, truthfully. Everything else is just extra. I'm always saying marketing is the icing on the cake. Everything else is just extra. But you want to make big money, you tend to have great products. And they tend to often have to be things that fill a need, that isn't too saturated, that's, really high quality. And, the listing itself is usually really irresistible. Great covers and thumbnails and previews and things that convert. Really awful listings are not going to make you a millionaire. That's the truth of it. If you just don't bother with previews and your covers are from 2012, it's going to be limiting for you. But anyway, so the next thing I was going to talk about was if you're a really established sort of seasoned kind of veteran sort of person and you really want to push into the high four figures, you want to earn 5 figures a month or even like 6 figures, or you're like one of the people trying to reach like $1 million or whatever, like when you're really, really established and you're earning the big bucks, so you're probably in the top 1% of sellers on TPT. Someone wrote the question, I would love more tips for seasoned sellers. I love listening to podcasts, but I feel like it's all just basic info. And I know there are some courses and things out there, but I would just love some basic strategies and tips for the right direction. And someone else said, I would love some advice for really seasoned sellers, especially if you've hit a plateau. And so my thoughts of this is when you are super established, finally, I'm going to say that yes, marketing is allowed. And that's because there gets to a point where you can't make another preview for your bestseller. You've done everything you can. It's doing the most it can do for you. Like there comes a point where you have to try something else. And so this is where you've done a lot of great product creation. You've done a lot of optimizing. So you have to do something different. And the different thing is actually marketing. Maybe you're in a really popular sort of saturated niche, like you have kindergarten resources, and the reality is that it's really, really hard to rank for some of these terms and, for certain kindergarten topics and stuff. So you're like, well, I'm going to have a thriving social media if I want to get my own traffic. I'm going to have a profitable blog and an email list. Like that becomes the thing that will differentiate you from everyone else, kind of get your own traffic basically to combat any competitiveness that happens. So you would keep using your social media, your Pinterest, your blog. But my big tip, I think, is to prioritize email marketing if you aren't already. So this is if you're one of the people in this range, this earnings range, I really think you should have an email list, 100%. I won't go on a big rant about it, but you probably already know it's hands down the most profitable when it comes to marketing in terms of ROI. So it's also one of those kind of safety net things of you having your own access to buyers and stuff. So you're not relying on TPT, which we all know has, with personalized search and everything that went on in the last few years, relying on TPT search as your sole like business practice ends up being a slap in the face, let's be honest. So having your own email list, having your own things outside of TPT kind of becomes a must if you want to maintain a high level of success, if you really want to scale big time. Email. I think you probably already know that. So if you haven't started, start. If you've got an email list you've been neglecting, don't neglect it. Get into sending weekly emails. That's probably something that would be really, really important at this stage. I think it's just really, really worth doing. Prioritize always growing the list, always marketing your lead magnets. So say you've got a Facebook group or an Instagram account or whatever, like making sure that that's something you're doing each week, that you're growing the list. I'm recording this right now in 2025, and I don't know if at the point this episode is released whether it's going to be relevant or not, but with everything going on with this like talk of TikTok ban, for example, we all know that social media is just so fleeting, whether things go out of date or get, your account gets deactivated, whatever, like it's just not reliable. So you can certainly be spending time on these things, but it should be working towards a bigger picture, like a long-term goal of having a massive email list that is really profitable for you. You want to be at the point where you know that you can send your weekly email on a Tuesday and you put in your newest resource, or you just want to market one of your bestsellers or something, and it's just going to bring hundreds of dollars to you the second you send it. Like that's the kind of thing you want to be working towards at this point in your business, is having that. So yeah, that's the end of my rant. If you are super, super established, the other thing I think is a bit of diversifying, and this would be not wise if you're still listening to this and you're someone that's on the more smaller side of a store. But this is a point where you certainly can make a course or a membership, have your own website shop, be on other marketplaces and be diversifying, because you tend to usually have more of the bandwidth to do that at this point. So it's certainly a great way to bring in extra money. There's a lot of people that end up finding really great success with having their own membership, and it becomes like this hugely profitable other side of their business. Sometimes it even out earns TPT. I've heard stories of that, but you're not relying on TPT so much. That's always really wonderful. And you need to be hiring. So if email was the one thing I ranted on about for a little while, the next thing would be hiring. If you are pretty established, you should not be doing it all on your own. And I won't rant about hiring for too long, but you should be doing it, and it should be to help you navigate having all these marketing platforms, to keep up with your big store and all your optimizing. If you want to keep creating products or writing weekly emails, you're going to probably need someone to help you with that. Or if you want to launch a website or a membership or course, whatever, you're probably going to need help. Sometimes it's with the thing you're doing, like, oh, I'm going to start a membership. I need help with that. Sometimes you'll do that, but you just need someone else to start taking over your things in your store so that you have the ability to start a membership. But hiring needs to be your thing. So if you haven't hired yet, you need to start hiring. And if you are already hiring, you're looking to whether you can afford your next hire. Obviously, you don't want to go crazy with it. We do these things gradually, but a lot of the time we can afford to hire more and we just don't want to, and it can hold you back. So the final thing I'm going to add is that at this point, you really need to be acting like a CEO. This is not a side hustle, little hobby anymore. This is a really, really serious business. And so there's a lot of mindset stuff there around what you should be doing, what you should be delegating, and taking it really, really seriously. It's not a case of, I'll just create another product that's going to magically make me a millionaire. Probably not going to be that anymore. But having this big team of people to help you, really diversifying into things like your own course or whatever, like this is the stuff that's going to push you into one of those really massive businesses. Now, that was everything I wanted to share on the growing and the scaling. And I want to wrap this up pretty soon. I hope this has really helped. Everything I say is just a guide. Of course, you don't have to listen to everything I say and follow it as some kind of gospel. There's flexibility in everything, but for the most part, I think if you're honest with yourself, a lot of what I'm saying makes a lot of sense. It makes sense to focus on product creation when you're earning $20 a month. It makes a lot more sense to grow an email list when you're earning $10,000 a month. Like, we have to spend time on the things that make sense for us. So start the things that you've been putting off starting. And, if you want to grow and scale, sometimes you do have to do something different. And it's different for everyone. A lot of the time, the different thing you need to be doing is you need to be optimizing instead of just creating. But as you grow, a lot of the time, the different thing you need to be doing is hiring and starting a new marketing platform. That's usually for a lot more seasoned people. But just a few ideas I wanted to share with you today. I really, really hope this has helped. At the end of the day, everyone's business is different. And so as much as I can try to give some broad tips in this episode, and it may well help you and apply to you, your business may be quite unique and different to other people's, and sometimes you really do need a more unique approach. Feel free to send me like an Instagram message or something if you want, or an email. You can like describe your business to me a little bit. Tell me about your situation you're in. I'm earning this much. I have this many products. I've been spending my time on this. I want to get to the next level. What do you think I need to do? If you want to add in anything specific about your niche or things that might make your situation a bit unique, about how much time you have to spend on things and whether you're part-time, full-time, whatever, you can throw in all the extra information if you think it will help. And I might be able to kind of guide you a bit more. For the most part, I think what I've said in this episode will probably apply to you, but it may well be that I tell you, oh, no, I think you're actually at the point where even though I said marketing should be off the table, no, by the looks of what you've got going on in your store, I think you probably could take on that platform, blah, blah. Like, the advice might be different for you uniquely. So you can always message me if you want. I'm happy to answer a quick message. But anyway, I hope that you have a terrific day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Terrific Teacherpreneur. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate that effort. Come back for more actionable tips and helpful wisdom in the next episode with your host, Alex. Until then.